So Turkey is in the news again. I wish they weren't. Erdogan has recently spoke to the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, where he mentioned Israel. He talked about how there is no Palestinian, Lebanese, Syrian, Yemeni, or Iranian problem, but there is clearly an Israeli problem. So today we'll talk about sort of the upping of tensions between Turkey and Israel, and generally we'll also go to some of the past context of Turkey, what has been happening, and all of that. Joining me today for the Daily Objective are James Valiant, Mark Pellegrino, and Alex. Thank you guys for joining me today. And I'll go to you, Mark, first, since I'm not sure if you were on recently, especially when it comes to the Iranian war and how you were following that. So I'll go to your thoughts also when it comes to what is now referred to as the 12-day war. And also, yeah, any thoughts on Turkey calling Middle East, Israel being the one problematic country in the Middle East?
Well, it's problematic because it exists, and none of those countries want Israel to exist, not for anything it's done, but for the fact that it's powerful. They don't like that. It seems to be a thorn in their side. Uh, as far as a 12-day war, it should have been a 24-day war. That would have given Israel enough time to actually eliminate Iran's nuclear capacity, which we now find out has only been reduced to 1 or 2 years, set back 1 or 2 years, which is ridiculous in my mind. If the goal was to completely eliminate them as a nuclear power, then that should have been what happened. I heard that there was intelligence released very early, which our Secretary of Defense denies, that trucks were taking fissile material out of the Fordo nuclear plant and transporting it somewhere else. I know Israel probably knows where those trucks are, and those trucks should be annihilated, and they probably would be under a proper system of government and alliances, but they are not. So the threat still remains out there. If it's a short jump from 60% enrichment to the 90% that they require to weaponize the uranium, then it's really not that long for them to have some kind of weapons grade material to put on a missile and send somewhere and or sell to an ally to attack us. So I think Trump, in his haste to get a Nobel Peace Prize, has really delayed the potential shift in the Middle East, power shifts that were happening as a result of what Israel was doing. As far as Turkey goes, Turkey should have been kicked out of NATO a long time ago. Erdogan is a fascist, Islamo-fascist creep, and nothing that he says has any legitimacy as far as I'm concerned. He has no place in an alliance with countries of the free world, and he should be out of it, and he should be given nothing. In fact, the demand for him to release those missile systems should be emphatic, as an ultimatum, in fact, and there should be no negotiations with a man who is now trying to eliminate his political opposition, like all thugs and authoritarians do, and is siding with a criminal organization like Hamas and the Palestinian Authority, and thinks that Iran, a criminal nation in its own right, is perfectly fine. This person has no place in the pantheon of free nations at all, and he should be excommunicated post haste.
Think we did we lose Daniel there? Recording
I
stopped.
think maybe we lost Daniel for a minute. Oh, okay. I think he's coming back in now.
Is returning.
Okay, sorry for that. We were still live, so I hope nobody said anything bad.
Just
Mark,
about you, Daniel. Don't worry. Yeah.
okay, Mark, I know you were talking. Mark, did you finish your thing? And can I move
I
on to
did,
some?
I did, I did. I had to save my dog. So I got it.
All right, so sorry for that. Hopefully it won't happen again. If it does, you guys just continue without me, and I'll be back just in a second. Yeah, j jumping to you, Alex. So. Yeah, when it comes to sort of Israel relationship with Turkey, it for a long time, I believe it was sort of decent, but with the rise of Erdogan, with the rise of his party, it really does seem that Erdogan is not only sort of abandoning its relationship with Israel, but sort of abandoning its relationship with the West that was there for quite some time and is sort of shifting in this direction. Now, yeah, what do you make of that? Do you think there is a threat of some amount of conflict, even if it's proxy, which kind of it was already, but yeah.
Okay, so I'm sure for the past kind of, year, couple of years, we've been hearing about this term deep state, right? So the term deep state actually originates in Turkey. And the term deep state in Turkey came out at around, I want to say, 1991. And it was referring to Turkey's, I would say, continual coups, right? Every couple of years, Turkey would have a coup. And Turkey used to have, under kind of since Ataturk, Turkey had state secularism, and so they very much, I would say, discriminated against the more religious Muslims, okay, in various kinds of ways. And whenever there was a leader who was going kind of a little bit too Islamic, even just very slightly, they would coup him, right? So Erdogan then comes on the scene and decides that he's going to try to, kind of correct that historical wrong. And as the kind of thing that happens with all leaders that have been in power for too long, his kind of identity has become very much merged with the state, which puts us in the situation that we find ourselves in now, whereby Turkey as a military is just completely hollowed out. Since 2016, they have purged 28,000 various soldiers, 400 generals. So you now have a hollowed out army, which is a palace guard, right? So, in Erdogan's attempt to protect himself from coups, he has made himself a house of cards militarily, right? From the outside, it looks like a tank, but it's cardboard. Okay, it's kind of like the Russian army when they were like, oh yeah, let's have this war, and then they got in the tanks and they were like, oh, these tanks are, they're child's toys. What are we going to do with this? So I think it's highly unlikely that there is, Turkey, when I see them, conversing with the Arabs like this, like, oh, we hate Israel, Israel's the problem. It's like, I mean, you guys are like the pick-me's. You truly are the pick-me's of the Islamic world, okay? You're not brothers. You'll never be brothers, right? You're worse than a Jew, yeah? Because Jews are Jews. We're just Jews. But you're kuffars. Not only that, but you're kuffars that actually, you oppressed, right? The Syrians and the Lebanese. You had a terrible empire here, and believe me, right? They've got less friends than Israel, that's for sure. So, I mean, I think it's so completely unlikely. If they were to have a war, no one would come and help them. I mean, who's going to come to their aid? Yeah, nobody, right? Quite literally nobody. They're from an intelligence perspective in NATO, they've been completely isolated since 2016 as well. I mean, how are they going to attempt to do this? And by the way, if Erdogan does that, I don't know if the military would even follow his orders. You know what I mean? I really don't think so. They still use Israeli tanks. They still use our modified Bradleys. So, yeah, I mean, good luck.
Yeah, and we can talk about sort of the NATO participation a little bit later. But yeah, when it comes to sort of like who would come to their help, the fact is like who is even left there to help them. The fact is that Israel has destroyed now pretty much any capability when it comes to Middle East of anybody to fight Israel who would want to fight Israel. Now,
Yeah, but
yeah.
again, they're not going to go into an alliance with Turkey. It's crazy. They're never going to do it. It does. And by the way, them supporting Hamas, I don't really judge them for that. they're prostitutes. They have to spread their love around as much as they can possibly. And also, let's not forget, it was not a great idea of Israel and the West to go and support the PKK. Yeah, they're a terrorist organization. They've killed Turkish people, 50,000 of them. So them supporting Hamas, I get it. I'm not hating them that much for that. You know, like they support everybody. It's part of who they are.
Yeah, and jumping to you, James. So something Erdogan has also said, I think this was a few years ago on X, is Hamas is not a terrorist organization and Palestinians are not terrorists. This is a resistance movement that defends the Palestinian homeland against an occupying power. The world stands in solidarity with the people of Palestine against their oppressors. So it's the same kind of BS we have been hearing recently, right?
Yeah, you tossed off the NATO thing, but it seems to me that when you're saying things
Well, I
like
want to
that,
like talk about it later. That's why.
yeah, we will, but
Okay.
it's still, I mean, my
Yeah.
God, Alex makes a terrific point. I mean, look at the history of Turkey. The Ottoman Empire was oppressing Arabs, oppressing everybody in the region for so long, and of course they were under tremendous pressure in Europe when their empire included the Balkans. They were, by the 19th century, they were called the weak man of Europe as a European power. And Turkey doesn't particularly have a lot of friends. They have been an aggressive imperialist threat to the Arab people, to all of the Arab nations, for how many centuries? For how many centuries? So it's not as though there's any love lost between the Arab speaking Muslim world and the Turkish world. But the direction that they're going in, I mean, they may as well reestablish, their ruler as a sultan and rename themselves again the Ottoman Empire. But because, there really can be no love lost in the entire region. All of their neighbors have a historical cause and a good historical cause to despise Turkey. There was a glimmer of hope more than 100 years ago when Ataturk took over and started moving in a secular direction. And there was a long time where they were beating back the Islamic forces within their own world. But as I say, that appears to have crumbled. I found Alex's comments, though, about the pathetic state of their military condition very interesting. But here they are. They're absolutely wanting to intervene in Syria. They're absolutely taking the side of, there's no problem in Yemen, even though they disrupt international trade which has got to affect the economy of the Mediterranean. And here they are cooperating with Russia. What on earth will it take for Europe and, frankly, for Mr. Trump or the United States to decide to kick them out of NATO? Because the fact is, you can't be in a mutual defense treaty, a mutual defense league with a country like that. They arrested at least 120 opposition leaders. They're becoming a rank political dictatorship right now. As I say, they may as well just call their Erdogan the Sultan once more. And, but of course that'd be bad PR because everybody in the region has longstanding historical reasons to hate them as but in our Marxist world, we use words like colonialist and imperialist. It really applies to Turkey up to the 20th century. And by the way, a little more than 100 years ago, they engaged in a real live genocide against the poor Armenians within their country. No, they have a shameful history. And they're moving more dramatically towards dictatorship. But on the other hand, if Iran gets beaten back a little bit, there's going to be some power that tries to fill in the power vacuum. But with Arab Muslims, as Alex says, I just don't think that that's going to fly. I just don't think that that's got any real oomph to it emotionally, because the Arab people have long historical reasons to truly hate the Turks. Turkey is in a position now where it's taking an overtly anti-Western position. And I have to say, whether we're going to return to it or not, that the West should absolutely boot them from NATO. This is long overdue. They are moving in a direction of dictatorship. They're acting like the worst dictators in the world, rounding up in dozens of them at a time, political opponents. And so while they may be pathetically weak, as Alex points out, and that is the part I find fascinating here, they are still nonetheless becoming a rank dictatorship as they once were, with whatever pathetic nature of their military, imperialist type ambitions to influence Syria at the very least. That is intolerable. But I'm confident Israel can deal with it. And I'm confident, again, that as with Iran, their Arab Muslim neighbors are going to be more on the side, quietly, if not publicly, but certainly quietly on the side of keep Turkey at bay. They are a threat, just like Iran is a threat to the Arab Muslim population in the area, historically, and now we see it existentially. So, but
So
I was
go ahead.
fascinated by what Alex was saying about how weak they are militarily. They're still using old Bradley tanks they got from Israel. Um,
Yeah, and also they're and also modified Phantom jets, I believe. But again, like I just it when you hollowing out 300 generals and 20, I think it's 26,000 soldiers since 2016. That's talent you're hollowing out, right? It's just like me firing the IDF and saying, okay, I'm going to take the first, 26,000 people I meet at a Paul Tel Aviv, like, Scott soccer match. Just, it's like that. It's so I'm more concerned about the human resources. If I was Erdogan, I'd be more concerned about. But again, that's not Erdogan's concern. His concern is, how am I going to coup-proof my military, right? How am I going to remove the coup forces and put in the loyalists? Okay, it's typical Arab military stuff, right? He's got a palace guard. He doesn't have a military.
Well, that doesn't only seem to be typical Arab stuff. It seems to be typical authoritarian way of doing. They kill the intelligentsia, they hollow out the people that are competitions to them. So then the question is, if Turkey is so weak, why are we even having this conversation? It's like Trump is about, as silly as Trump is, he understands who holds the cards, and Turkey holds no cards. So they are literally cardless in this game. Why is there even the suggestion that we will sell them F-35s? We don't owe them anything. We don't have to even, they've breached the contract between us a long time ago. And if they're weak, let them fall of their own accord. Let them fall under the weight of their own, incompetence. Why are we even talking about these people?
I think we're talking about them, I think, because people keep talking about it, right? People keep kind of spreading this nonsense about how there's going to be a mass, Israel needs to have a massive confrontation and think about it with Turkey, tomorrow. And it's like, of course, you need to keep that in your mind. You need to, constantly be cognizant of future threats and always, analyzing them. But I don't know how you can read the tea leaves and come up with a suggestion that, Turkey is a threat. On paper, yeah, definitely, right? But again, in reality, it's like Saddam Hussein's army. Saddam Hussein on paper had an amazing army, right? He had the best.
We took care of it in 2 weeks.
Yeah, not even. Operation Desert Storm was 3 days. I mean, not only that.
And the media was hyping it up like, oh my God, we're going to die. He has a 1 million man army. It's terrible.
And also, that's another thing that authoritarian armies have that's a problem. Surrendering is a big problem. Yeah, especially because they're just not motivated to fight, because they basically have put in a general to sit in the air conditioning and just kind of, oh, I'm a general. He's not there to fight a war. He's not there to,
Well, this makes me more upset that Iran wasn't given 12 more days to finish. That Israel wasn't given 12 more days to finish Iran, because I think Iran would be finished if Israel were allowed to bomb the infrastructure that it wanted to, even in retaliation when Iran broke the ceasefire technically and blew off those missiles as a final, good night message a half an hour after the ceasefire was supposed to be implemented. Trump stopped them in the middle of a counter assault, which I think would have been just a death blow to Iran. And that's I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if that. I think it was. I think Bibi said, "Say, please call a ceasefire, because we can't. If we get pulled into attrition, we're totally screwed. We can't win a war of attrition with Iran.
Like, I think that we did all we could do, and I don't think we had that many missile interceptors. And I think it was like 12 days for Israel. The kind of the underlying theory of the IDF is to always fight the war on the enemy's territory and short and violent. Okay, like 13 days is getting into a situation that I don't know if we could have fought on. Right?
But wouldn't that extra 12 days have not made it a war of attrition? Because you knock out their infrastructure entirely, you knock out the island where they deliver all their oil everywhere else, so you knock them out economically, and you completely remove their nuclear capacity. What do they have left? A bunch of 12-year-olds with Qurans chanting Allahu Akbar to be mowed down by machine guns. They have no army. They have nothing. Now they're subject to the potential coup that the liberal factions of that society could enact on their own. I don't think it would catch them in an attrition war.
I think the intercontinental ballistic missiles definitely proved to be a problem because every single one of them, they cost $2 million to intercept. And I think that we didn't have enough of the interceptors. So in theory, if they would have continued to do that, and they have a lot of ballistic missiles, right? They could have taken out our power system. They could have taken out real critical infrastructure. I'm not saying we would have been on the level of like, okay, we're facing an existential extinction tonight, but we could have been facing real problems, okay? And I don't know if it would have been that responsible when again I'm just speculating. Yeah, I don't know the real reasons, but I don't know if fighting on would have under the circumstances would have been that, what's the word? Sensible. I think.
Well,
I think it would.
This speaks to the shameful American underreaction.
Yeah.
This speaks to Mr. Trump. I think your concerns are valid from the Israeli perspective, absolutely, and that's why Mr. Trump needed to help finish the job. I mean, and he had plenty of reason too. He broke his promise, in effect, to react to them when they did attack American bases in the wake of it. There should have been no response, even a tolerated one that was given a pre-warning or something, as Mr. Trump, well, they didn't kill any of us. We were given a warning ahead of time. 14 because of our 14. Well, that's BS. If you have reason to attack Iran, you have reason to attack Iran and continue to attack them. All of their missile sites, all of their military bases, all of their military infrastructure. In fact, go for the leadership. In fact, this is, and if we're going to use if we're talking about Turkey, once more, I suspect it's Mr. Trump who's throwing a lifeline to an evil regime. And so America's behavior has been worse than morally bankrupt. Actually, it has been supporting and sanctioning really awful regimes, and regimes that America would really have no problem taking out if necessary. So no, you don't have a military, you don't send the fighters, as Mark says, to Ankara. You say, no, I'm sorry, that's off. And in fact, any cooperation with us is off, so long as you're making this kind of noise about Israel and about there's no problem in Yemen, there's no problem with Hamas. Come on. No, so long as you keep threatening, in effect, by implication, Israel, our best friend. Guess what, Erdogan? Israel's our friend here. So you can just back the F off, okay? And if we had shown some real deterrence with Iran, that threat would have some real teeth. If you guys intervene in Syria, guess what's going to happen to you all? And so it's Mr. Trump who's throwing the lifeline to these evil regimes. We didn't need boots on the ground, but we sure could have done a much better job of taking out Iran's military infrastructure, including those missiles that you're talking about, because it is the ballistic missile program in Iran that is the threat to Israel and everyone else in the region and the world. And if you were to establish a deterrence like that, then what you do is you make the moral case to Turkey, which may be just a basket case. Now, the weak man of Europe, if I can extend the metaphor, and say, you take a breath in Syria and you will face our wrath. That's the way it has to be.
I mean, I think. Well, sorry, go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah. I want to just bring on one more thing, since I think Mark mentioned it. There are talks. Erdogan is now confident that basically American fifth generation F-35 fighter programs will come to Turkey. Now, there are currently sanctions on Turkey because they were buying Russian
yes.
equipment. Yeah, we'll
Can't
talk
play
about
both sides of the street.
yeah, just quickly, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about also NATO in just a bit. But before we move on, first let me thank our super chatters. Bonnie, thank you so much. Upolzus, thank you so much. Regina, thank you so much. And I'd like to remind people that we have a upcoming conference later this year. We have one short video we'd like to show for that, and then I'll also post links in the chat. So let's watch a little video.
I've played rebels, outlaws, and gods, but nothing is more powerful than being the creator of your own life. So that's why I'm coming to the Irreplaceable Spark Conference, not just to speak, but to coach. Now, if you're ready to stop making excuses and stop bending a knee to mediocrity, I want to work with you. And this isn't for followers, okay? It's for the builders. It's for the risk takers. It's for the fire starters. And if that's you, I'll see you there.
So yes, the Irreplaceable Spark Conference, you can sign up for it and find out more about it using the link in the chat, objectivism.co.uk for people in the listening to this on the podcast version, as well as you can use the code ARCUK Premium for $100 off premium ticket, as well as ARCUK VIP for $20 off the VIP ticket. So make sure to sign up as soon as possible.
Sign up just to be coached by Mark. Gosh sakes. I think you'll have an opportunity to be coached by me as well. So you can't miss that, folks. Really.
So yeah, and with that, let's come back to the story. So yeah, we have the Trump talking about or potential Erdogan mentioning that potentially there would the sanctions on the Turkish defense sector would be lifted, and then yeah, there is this whole NATO part, which I'm really interested in how that could even go. The fact is that Article 5 of NATO has only been triggered once after 9/11 by America on September 12th, 2001. And there was no like automatic thing that had to happen. Every nation reacted in a different way. Some nations that joined later reacted in a different way. It was not like, let's say, the Afghanistan war or Iraq war. Every single NATO nation joined because that was sort of what was expected. No, it's every single nation reacted in a different way. So let's say Turkey was attacked by Israel. Now that would also would mean that sort of like Israel would have to be the one initiating it, since it's a defense alliance, not offensive alliance. But it still requires something. So yeah, I mean, to go to you, Mark, what do you think would happen if that really is? The fact is that NATO exists, it is a real thing, but the fact is, as we mentioned, Turkey is increasingly isolated, and even if we don't straight up kick them out, the fact is that will somebody come running to the help, even if they try to trigger Article 5?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think everybody knows that Turkey really should no longer be a part of NATO, and I don't think anybody wants to get dragged into that quagmire in Turkey, especially against Israel. I mean, I'm not an expert on this particular situation, so I'm just I'm giving an opinion. And we saw Iran get abandoned by all its major allies when Israel attacked them in concert with the United States, and we saw them all back off and not do anything to protect Iran. And I suspect that Turkey's increasing isolation will mean that the NATO members will not necessarily respond in accordance to that article. And there's, they've got their hands full, I think, with Russia and Ukraine right now. There's no reason why they should, go into Turkey to defend it against a free state. I think that would be an absurdity. But what do I know?
We have a super chat from Tora Worldwide. Thank you so much. A super chat from PC. Thank you so much. He says Turkey is an Islamist nation. It's definitely, at the very least, becoming one under Erdogan. And we also have a super chat from Ginger. Thank you so much. He says, for the puppy-loving Mark Pellegrino video, really powerful. Thank you so much. And let me remind people again that they can sign up for the conference at objectivism.co.uk. Now, sort of, yeah, I mean, going to you, Alex, I think there was, some people might remember during the Russia-Ukrainian war, there was an instance where I think a Russian rocket fell, or a missile fell in Polish territory, and I think killed 2 people. And people were talking like, oh my God, does this mean World War II is starting? Does this mean that basically all the nations are now at war with Russia? But the fact was that it was kind of ignored, but also kind of understood that that wasn't the goal of Russia, that Russia didn't want to do that. And so we didn't really consider it. But yeah, what would happen if Turkey is in a conflict? And yeah, again, like, what do we actually expect the NATO nations to come in? And if not, then there is a question about it kind of undermines NATO, the fact that, you have a nation in there that possibly gets attacked and then nothing happens. I mean, at some point you have to ask yourself, how valid is NATO, and how much should we try to actually make it valid by kicking out Turkey?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that Turkey is part of NATO and Cyprus isn't. But again, I mean, Turkey should have been part of NATO, right? I mean, in the 1950s, of course. Absolutely, that's when they joined. And so I think that's perfectly legitimate. There's other considerations to be made with Turkey. I mean, they are building a nuclear reactor on a fault line, on an earthquake fault line as well, which I don't know how we're going to be solving that one. I mean, of course, they're saying it's for, nuclear energy, whatever, but a lot of people have been speaking about this, what should be done. There was a good article, I think, that was written by Michael, I want to say Rubin. I think it was Michael Rubin. For the American Enterprise Institute. He's a Turkey analyst. And he was kind of saying, what should we do about this nuclear reactor? Maybe Israel should bomb it, whatever. But, it's kind of like, why with Israel? I mean, why not Turkey, Cyprus, Turkey, Greece? I mean, Turkey has a lot of, why not Turkey, Kurdistan? I mean, Turkey, they're already in a war with Kurdistan. I don't know why Israel would be the number one. I mean, the idea that Greece is going to join in and defend Turkey is, I mean, it's ludicrous. Even the whole thing with them kind of occasionally closing the Black Sea to Russian fleets because of Crimea. I mean, people kind of are viewing this in this way, like, oh, it's because they're on the side of, Ukraine, whatever. I think they see Crimea as theirs. I think that's why they don't want Russia to be, rifling through it. I think they see it as theirs. I think that they see it as part of Turkey. So that's why they were kind of getting involved in it. But I mean, they are a problem. I'm dismissing them and being quite disparaging. But again, they are a dictatorship, and any dictatorship is eventually going to have an outside enemy. So that's what makes them dangerous, actually. But it's kind of like, who's the outside enemy going to be? Is it going to be Israel? Is it going to be Cyprus? Is it going to be Greece? Is it going to be whoever? I mean, they have 3 million Syrians living in Turkey. And they're really, not liked. They don't like them being there. So that's also, a legitimate enemy for them, right? Yeah, I mean, the prognosis is not great for them. And, they have all of the other problems with their birth rate is dismal. I think the birth rate being dismal, like Iran, it's a dismal birth rate. So I don't think that even the people, there's been a few studies that were released a couple of years ago that even says that the citizens are far less Islamized than they were 10 years ago when Erdogan took over. But Erdogan's influence will be there for many years because he has indeed reshaped the education system. So you're going to feel that effects in Turkey for generations to de-Erdoganize the people. That is a dictatorship, and all dictatorships are weak. And in the end, their war, yeah.
And no dictatorship belongs in NATO. And what we do is we devalue NATO and we dilute the effect of being in NATO. And why the hell
Yeah.
should Putin even care if Ukraine joins NATO at some point? Because it doesn't mean that anyone has to do a damn thing or lift a finger to help at all. And so that's what we're doing. And that's what we've progressively done, is make NATO less and less of a meaningful thing. To include a dictatorship at all is to give it moral sanction. And it's that kind of moral sanction, and that whatever security that gives Erdogan in his own mind. Okay, well, I belong to NATO. There's only so much the West will do against me. Insofar as does that has any effect, it can only be a negative one on the world and on civilization, because you can't recognize a dictatorship. And you just look at the 120 political opponents that he's just rounded up and arrested. That should be cause in itself to get the West to Turkey from even the nominal sanction that NATO remains being, or whatever psychological security it gives the government in Ankara. But as I say, they have a significant Syrian population, and of course they're very interested in Syria. But imagine a war breaking out between Israel and Turkey. Yeah, okay, they're hollowed out, and they may just back themselves into a war because they have enemies. And as you say, I mean, with their position on Crimea, well, damn that Catherine the Great back in the 18th century. So if you're still living in that kind of a time warp, like I think Turkey is to a large extent, that tells you a lot about the country itself, and and should they do anything within Syria, we have to make it perfectly clear that ain't cool. That America would, but of course, with Mr. Trump, who's willing to negotiate anything with anybody at any time, because after all, deal making is the solution to all problems at all places in this world. I think that we're not in a good position to likely in the future to take a firm moral stance, which is what we have to do.
I wonder, just I wonder what if NATO sees itself in is existentially threatened by Russia, which I really don't think they are. But I wonder if they would even want to weaken themselves by removing even the facade of Turkey, right? I mean, I wonder. I mean, I'm wondering if they would say, why would let's just isolate them, okay, and just we'll keep them there for the facade. Or you also wouldn't want to have Turkey switching sides. But again, Turkey and Russia, the idea that they're going to be allies is also kind of is also kind of dumb. But still, I wonder if they have said, okay, let's try and keep them with us until we want to make a decision upon it, right?
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah,
Alex, can I ask you a question? Why do you think that's dumb?
No, I mean,
the alliance between Russia and Turkey, since they've meddled everywhere else in the Middle East. Why is Turkey more stupid than, say, Syria?
What you mean, like having an alliance with Turkey and Russia? Well, yeah. Well, Turkey and Russia, it's that you have two dictators who traditionally it's very difficult to marry, right? Two dictators who basically want to have the same territory, right? I mean, it's kind of like Stalin and Hitler. Yeah, okay, after we've defeated them, then we're going to fight. So, and it's just historically as well. Turkey really sees itself as this big empire, like Russia sees itself as this big empire. I don't see it. I don't see that. But yeah, I mean, they do support them financially. They do buy their oil and everything, but they have, I don't think that there's this great alliance there. And Syria, it's a weak regime. So I think that is, they have to kind of take whatever they can get. in that if some big patron comes, you don't see yourself on the same level as him. I think that you see him as this guy that you can use, right? Whereas in Putin, he was like, oh, who is this Erdogan? How dare he even think that I want to be in an alliance with him? It's, you know what I mean? I find it, it doesn't, traditionally, I don't see it working for me. Oh, I'm very sorry, Billy, if my audio is higher than everybody else's.
I don't think it's higher, but do you have the correct setting on your microphone? Because it is a bit resonating. Try to figure that out. Somebody in the chat says, where was it? Turkey isn't in the West. It is the West that is in Turkey. Turkey can't even be allowed to join the EU, so you don't mind them fighting on your side under NATO command. So again, I'm not. There's so many wrong things there. First, Turkey is not disallowed from joining EU. There was a plan. They could have. The plan stopped because of their human rights violations, because they are locking up their opponents, because they have like abuse after abuse. There are, you know, EU, it's not the greatest organization, but it has like a bare minimum of not oppressing your citizens that countries like Turkey are currently not upholding. That's why they are not allowed in. But yeah, they normally would be if they simply followed all the criteria. We also have a super chat from PC. Thank you so much. He says US should remove its nukes as soon as possible. Yeah, I believe America still has some or has some of the bombers that can carry nukes in Turkey, stationed in Turkey. We also have a super chat from Bull Moose. Thank you so much. He says they also host a Hamas cell. How does that not challenge their qualifications to stay in NATO? I mean, absolutely, but that expects moral beliefs in the West. The fact that why are like 70% of countries still in the UN with their human rights abuses, with their view of sort of like how governments work. It's we have compromised in the West. We have compromised on what it means to be a country. We recognize a bunch of countries that have no legitimacy. We have sort of like basically gave up a lot when it comes to sort of like upholding what it means to be a good nation, what it means to be sort of like a moral and legitimate country. So the answer, I think James asked me before the show, what would it take for countries to kick out Turkey out of NATO? And I don't think there is anything, because that would require some standard, that would require some ability to judge when something goes too far. We continuously negotiate with Hamas. We continuously allow China to get away with stuff. We still trade with Russia. We are willing to negotiate with Iran. So what is leaving one authoritarian nation in NATO so far? I mean, this is what you are kind of seeing now.
And what we can't be is paralyzed by the idea that they could go over to the Russian side. As Alex points out, the Russians are not 10 feet tall. They never have been 10 feet tall. Western foreign policy for so many decades, for the good part of the last century, has been paralyzed by the myth that the Russians are 10 feet tall. And as we've just learned again, Alex has emphasized, the Turkey is not even 3 feet tall. So they do control some strategic areas. You know, they absolutely, by controlling the Dardanelles, they control access to the Black Sea, and that's a very important thing. But we should make it clear to them they can't use that against other nations either. We should put them on the other side of the pressure here, not let them use, pressure us. I mean, we've had a fascinating historical conversation. Thank you, Alex. I mean, Turkey is one of those countries that historically has pissed off literally every single one of its neighbors in various ways. Everyone in the Balkans, including Greece, of course, Russia, of course, the Arabs to the south of them and to the east of them, of course. Every single one of their neighbors has a historical gripe against Turkey, and for perfectly valid reasons. So.
And let's not forget the Kurds that live inside of Turkey. Yeah. So you then have you have also the insurgency. You know, some analysts think as much as 40% of Turkey is Kurdish. But there's debate about between 20 and 40, depending really on who you ask. But it's like they also have a major insurgent problem as well.
Not a stable regime, inherently an unstable regime. What you'd say is even partially true, that the military has been gutted out and it's really just a palace guard now, then there is nothing. We should be the ones taking at least the moral stance. And as you point out, the West has lost any kind of moral clarity and backbone, Daniel. And that's really the problem, because just an ounce of moral backbone would cause them to back down. They would really have to, because they're such a weak and unstable regime, basically hated by all their neighbors for good historical reasons.
If they did have a strong military, I truly think that they would have had a coup, a successful coup already. I think that they had that kind of false flag coup back in 2014 that they used basically as like their reason for purging purging the military, of disloyal people or whatever. But I think that it's, Turkey is like it's a coup. It's a coup country. It's like I think they've had like so many coups over the past however many years. But I think there would have been a coup if the military was strong. They would have said, "Oh man, I've so had enough of this like Erdogan dude. He's totally like, ugh." I think a lot of people in Turkey are embarrassed over him and some of the things that he does and says. At least from what I can gather from listening to Turkish people. I think a lot of them are kind of like cringe. This Erdogan guy is like, not for me.
We have a super chat from Jonathan. Thank you so much. And yeah, it would be sort of like interesting to see where the Turkey will go from now on, because I believe the elections, when they happen, they are still relatively sort of like close. They are not on Putin level of sort of like
they have free elections, yeah, supposedly, yeah, they have. I mean, besides, I'm saying they have like the electoral process does appear to be free, right? He puts, especially the last one, is that everybody, one person, one ballot, your vote gets counted kind of thing. And of course, there's a locking up of all the political, opposition, whatever. But the process apparently is free.
They start blocking up political opponents, though. How meaningful are elections? I mean,
of course. I mean the ballot process, yeah. And then it's not like in Russia where they're stuffing envelopes, where they're kind of, a few ballots might just get might evaporate, or there might be a big fire or whatever. I mean, the ballot process appears to be like free.
Yeah, but jumping to Mark, what do you think will happen when it comes to Turkey? Do you think at some point the West will realize that maybe this nation shouldn't be in NATO, or will we wait for basically Turkey to sort of jump back again, get rid of Erdogan, and try to maybe sort of like slide back to the West?
You're asking me to predict what pragmatic politicians will do? Politicians that have divorced themselves from principle for decades and decades and decades.
Yes.
It's unpredictable. What should they do? They should have kicked Turkey out of NATO a long time ago. They should have probably done something to them for harboring Hamas leaders and for accepting military equipment from Russia. The least they should have done was kick them out entirely and isolate them economically, at the least. So who knows what they're going to do? We got a guy in office now who thinks he can make deals with Khamenei. I mean, it's utterly absurd. He thinks he can make deals with Hamas. I think he's got his mind set on getting a Nobel Peace Prize, and he's in the midst of that. He's lost any wisdom he might have had respecting the human condition and human nature. Criminals are not to be negotiated with. They're to be prosecuted and put away, and or in the emergency situation of war, killed and taken out entirely. So there is no world in which Hamas and the rest of the world can live. There should be no bargaining conditions under which that state is possible. There should be no world in which an Erdogan can, run around trying to court all sides and be a whore to everyone so that his administration can survive. It has no right to survive. There should be no world in which a group of free nations allow a dictatorship in as part of its organization, because that's a compromise with evil. And as we all know as objectivists, that means evil wins and the good loses. That's why the UN is so morally despicable on every level, because it attempts to bring together ideologies that are both good and bad. And in every sense, the good ideologies have to compromise to the bad, and the bad ends up winning. So I don't know what they're going to do. I know what they should do. I just don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah, and just to mention, it's not that Turkey has been just harboring the sort of the political class of Hamas, but like actively training the terrorists. So yeah, the fact that
that's it, you're done. That's it. That should be the end. End of story. There should be no question.
Yeah, Alex, any last thoughts from you?
Since I mentioned him already, I'm gonna recommend a book by Michael Rubin. He is an analyst at the American Enterprise Institute. He wrote a book in 2014 called "Dancing with the Devil: The Perils of Engaging Rogue Regimes." And he just briefly says engagement with rogue regimes is not cost free, as Michael Rubin demonstrates by tracing the history of American diplomacy with North Korea, Iran, Iraq, Libya, and Taliban's Afghanistan. I recommend this. And also reading a little bit more about what he says about Turkey, and then kind of for another opinion, I recommend Michael Duran, who is an analyst that is a bit more pro-Turkey. I mean, he's an American, but I don't want to say pro-Turkey, as in he has a more positive outlook on the American-Turkey relationship. And I respect both of these people. And also ARCUK. Again, this is perfect, this title. The Perils of Engaging in Rogue Regimes. I think that is like the underlying story that you need to take away from this.
James, can I just say thank you, Alex, for now adding to my huge book queue. I just ordered that book.
Yeah, I was about to say you sold me with that subtitle right there. That's that. I mean, because that is the story of American foreign policy. We create, coddle, foster our own enemies every time, whether it's Nazi Germany, Soviet Russia, you name it, currently China. Well, America's history is a long, shameful, and stupidly suicidal one in which we have been dealing with rogue regimes. And look, dictatorships, as Ayn Rand pointed out long ago, are parasitical. They can't survive. Evil produces no value. It can't. To the extent a nation is a dictatorship and evil, it is weak. It is will collapse on its own. It needs war. It is dictatorships are the cause of war in the modern world. Please read Miss Rand's work on this and Capitalism, the Own Ideal. You'll learn quite a lot. And yeah, you can find me here at Ayn Rand Center UK, where every Sunday I do seminars on the work of Dr. Leonard Peikoff. I'm doing that for some time now. But you got to be a paid subscriber to participate. So please consider that. You're getting a voice here that you won't get anywhere else.
Yeah, and that's for both the ARCUK website members as well as the YouTube members. You can find the link to that in the description. Also, Mark, I haven't asked you, where can people find you?
Oh, Mark R. Pellegrino.
You muted yourself.
My damn microphone. Mark R. Pellegrino on X, or Mark Ross Pelly on Instagram. You could also go to AmericanCapitalistParty.org and donate, become a member of the American Capitalist Party. I'm on the Capitalist Corner every day at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern. Sometimes we are joined by the great James Valiant, which makes for stimulating conversation. So we talk about the news from a capitalist perspective, and as much as possible endorse the Capitalist Party. And it looks like Elon Musk now is trying to form an American party, which is clearly socialist, if you read any of what he wants to do. So I've been tweeting him like mad and trying to get the Capitalist Digital Army to tweet at him that the American Capitalist Party will do it better than he can imagine. So if you're on X, try to turn him on to American Capitalist Party, because he needs a lesson in ethics. He needs a lesson in politics, and he'll be the better man for humbling himself and receiving the lesson. I think that's it. I think that's all the places you can get me at for now.
Yeah, I think Elon Musk is definitely one of those people who you just look at how well he could have gone, and unfortunate how he didn't. I still remember his, I think, I don't know exactly it was, I think it was something about him sending a rocket to space or something, and somebody asked him, well, what if there is like a government regulation, or government would want to do something about your rockets in space, and he said, well, they can wag their fingers at the sky, which I think is a right response you should give to the government when they want to control you. But with that, let's actually listen from Mark just a bit more.
I've played rebels, outlaws, and gods, but nothing is more powerful than being the creator of your own life. So that's why I'm coming to the Irreplaceable Spark Conference, not just to speak, but to coach. Now, if you're ready to stop making excuses and stop bending a knee to mediocrity, I want to work with you. And this isn't for followers, okay? It's for the builders. It's for the risk takers. It's for the fire starters. If that's you, I'll see you there.
Might I say, amazing production value for being behind a pizza joint in White Plains, New York.
Well, thank you for that. I was the one who edited that. So again,
Well
the
done.
Irreplaceable Spark Conference, October 25th and 26th. You can sign up on the website objectivism.co.uk. The link to that is in the description. You can also use codes. I have them here. ARCUK Premium to get $100 of premium ticket, and ARCUK VIP to get $200 of the VIP ticket. With that, thank you guys for joining me today. Thank you everybody for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode of the Daily Objective, as well as the reality show. Until then, no reality show, just the Daily Objective for now. Thank you and bye-bye.
Jeez.